welcome to another edition of Unplugged as we get ready for Friday Night Lights for the first time this season, and we enter a fourth consecutive week on top of the AFL ladder, something that probably continues to defy belief, really, based on whatever expectations were at the start of the year. We answered a very stiff challenge from a Carlton side that was keen to bounce back, and it was a really pleasing win where, just as we'd done against Collingwood the week before, we'd absorbed a stack of pressure and then turned the wheel, and whilst Collingwood had got away from us just before we did that, we were able to absorb Carlton, stay with them, and then raise the bar, which they couldn't go with late, and it was a really satisfying victory against a team that you do love to beat. Obviously, to claim Carlton and Essendon and a narrow loss to Collingwood, so have almost completed that trio. But what it does do is obviously underlines our credentials. We look back to last year when we were 5-1 at the same stage. We played Port Adelaide in the infamous Round 7 clash in Cairns. We now get them on a Friday night stage in front of a big crowd on our own home ground at Marvel Stadium. The whole thing feels different, including that, and hopefully that is emphasised as we move towards this week. But another reason to be proud, another good, strong, committed, trusting performance from St Kilda, and they move to 5-1. And at the moment, obviously you pinch yourself, and St Kilda fans are cautious, but we sort of stepped through very pleased with how it's going. And H, I want to touch on a question a bit later on from someone on Twitter that asked about when we felt safe, but there is a little bit of that in that you kind of feel that when we get on top that, much like it was when Ross coached us the first time, that we're probably not going to let that go.
Yeah, first of all, welcome back, Pago. That's we should cover it off first. So, good one to come back. Always, as we say, always nice to beat Carlton. That's if we win one game a year, that's the one you want.
Well, we've now beaten 2 of the 3 Cs.
Yep,
Paco. Yes, correct.
But yeah, it was just I guess, solid performance. The first half, we sort of, we just stayed with them, did what we had to do, had a bit go against us, and the second half thought, no, let's just finish this game off. Let's take control, play how we want to play, put them to the sword and go, this is our 4 points. We want this more than you do. And you could see by the end of the last quarter, the Carlton players were just cooked. They couldn't keep up. They just dropped off, and it's just one of those games you could see it was going to probably change at some point. It just had that feeling of we're not doing, I guess, that last little bit that was going to mean that we were going to get 2, 3, 4, 5 goals ahead. We could have maybe put the foot down a little earlier, but I don't know. I think they got it in half time, and Darren gave a nice explanation at half time saying what was probably going to happen, and I'll be 110% sure that's probably just about what he probably said to him, because they came out looking a lot stronger, a lot quicker, making better decisions, and just put the foot down and went. So a great win, and we'll hopefully play 4 quarters of that this week.
And I guess, Nick, you're never certain that you will turn it around, but I guess on reflection you look at it and thought, first half Carlton were on top in clearances, on top in inside 50s.
Contested.
The umpiring had been atrocious to that point, contested, but we were 4 points down, and you kind of felt that they can't do much more than that. We're not playing particularly well, and we're only a kick down. You kind of, I don't know, maybe that's a reflection thing, but you kind of thought, well, if we get any level of momentum, then
that's right. It kind of felt like Carlton were rolling. They were playing their brand of footy, but we never let them get away from us. And the fact that we were 4 points down with Steele clearly underdone and not having a huge impact in that first quarter. Wilkie and Battle probably had their worst games as defenders for the footy club, and Crouch was quiet, compared to his normal standard. We were all quiet, and I think that's kind of one of the hallmarks of this team is that we're not reliant on the same players every week as we have been in the past to have a blinder. And Steele went into that kind of selfless role and took Cripps in the second half and had an impact that way when he wasn't winning as much of the ball himself. Crouch continued to go in hard. Wilkie, started to turn it around. Josh Battle certainly turned it around in the second half. I thought he was fantastic in the second half. And then, like you said, H, just kind of put the foot down and went, hang on, now we're going to play our game. We've played your game for long enough, your shitty kick-to-kick game around half-back where you can't get past us. Now we're going to play our game for the next 40 minutes. And we did that. And that was, Jack Sinclair goes in the middle and he's the guy to turn it around. And, it was a bunch of players just kind of took that next step and decided to kind of, for want of a better phrase, but stop fucking around with it and just go and win the ball and win the game. And that's what they did.
Yeah, and the proactive coaching, as Nick alluded to, it's Sinclair's a little bit down. We're still going okay, but a little bit down. Put him in the middle, get away from the negative attention that he's facing. Jack Steele's come back a bit rusty, ball in hand and everything like that. Just go and run with Cripps. You can tag him. You've got the body type. So even if you're not playing well, take him out of the game and really good adapting on the run. And that's obviously what you like to see.
It almost seemed like Sinclair's job in the back line wasn't working, he didn't have that same role that he normally has in there. It just wasn't happening. It was a real, I guess, up their end was a tall, dominated forward line. So just that running small defender sort of thing just wasn't really happening on the day. So we've seen now, if we're struggling in the middle, there's another move we make. We've now got Mitchie going ruck. We've got Sinclair roving. We could have the quickest midfield in the league. We could absolutely burn teams the way that they do, or what it looks like they can do in the middle there. If we're finding it hard,
it's not just simple like single moves either. It wasn't just Sinclair goes in the middle and steps up. It was Brad Hill steps up at halftime and runs the pants off everybody else's. Wanganeen Miller starts delivering the ball off halfback. Ryan Burns stands up. Ben Patton stands up. Like everybody stood up at that point. And like you said, it was kind of that move that we can make of pushing Jack Sinclair. And what a luxury to be able to push Jack Sinclair
Naz probably took
and have an impact.
Naz probably took the role that Sinclair was meant to have been playing and slotted in perfectly. Stocker did the same sort of thing. It was almost like it wasn't like a flip. It was almost like a roll. The players rolled around in position to just twisted and just all changed and clicked. And it's that shows us not only are we going to have options of players to bring in, we're going to have options of what to do on the day as well. We've seen where we've fallen over in previous times has been a player's been down in position. We've looked and gone, who can we replace him with? They're losing their position, and we've got no one who can go and do that. But now we seem to have these multi-position players who are able to do a different role. So it's
and the reinforcements are starting to come back. Obviously, we'll talk about that later, but Billings very good at Sandy. Obviously, Bytel, who was given a full game, couldn't have done more. Isaac Keeler, obviously a fair way away from AFL, but he came back. We're getting closer with Jones, Caulfield, Webster, King. So obviously that's creeping a little bit closer, so we'll talk all about that as well. But yeah, I'm sure a lot of Saints fans, and I was one, you sort of belt the chest with pride a little bit when you heard Liam Stocker speaking after the game, and he kind of like, I could vibe that, and that's great. We obviously, we've seen the passion in Jack Higgins, another lifelong Saint, and, credit to a couple of others as well. I thought, I might mention it a little bit later on, but I thought the week before against Collingwood that Jay Gresham played the worst game I've ever seen from somebody that had played 100 games, like an absolute dead set shocker. He was much, much better. A lot of energy, crafty around goal. That's what you want. You've got to respond, and that's exactly what he did. And, I like the progress from guys like Butler, Dan Butler especially, under Ross. He's only scored probably in half the games, maybe 3 of the 6, but that pressure forward that he was in 2020, we're seeing a bit more of that, and he's kicking some clutch goals. So, credit where it's due on that front as well. And the best game I reckon Ryan Burns has probably ever played, to be honest. He's had a pretty solid year, but only had 20 if you look at the stat sheet. But I thought that was as good as we've seen from him. So there was a lot to like about it, because the week before against Collingwood was a game that in the past we would have lost by 6 goals, and I reckon the way things were going against us in this game against Carlton, a similar thing would have happened. We might as well rant on it because we won it, because I think everybody was talking about it, but I haven't seen umpiring that bad in a long time. It felt like, I think I put on Facebook that Charlie Curnow would be registered as an official charity by now, based on everything that was happening. But some of those 50-metre penalties, goodness me, the one to Jack Silvani at the start of the third quarter, I'm like, you have got to be joking. And then Jack Higgins getting murdered on the halftime siren.
Yeah, saw one today where
Higgins got decapitated twice and didn't get a free, let alone a 50. So.
Yeah, I saw one today where I can't remember which players it was, but the Collingwood player, I think it was Dacos, pushed the Essendon player, took the mark, actually pushed him two-handed in the chest, and he fell backwards and landed on the ground. And you're going, well, that's a 50. Nope. It was, you're sort of thinking, well, just.
And last night in the, I think it was Morris Rioli, Junior cleaned up someone, and it wasn't 50. It was a crucial stage.
There was that contest with Mitch Owens. He had full on his arm around his throat, and I mean, it was just, it was all over the shop. And as bad as our kind of key defenders who have been so reliable were going, like the reality is that they didn't even have to touch Mackay or Curnow. They just had to breathe in their general direction. They'd give away a free kick, and it made that whole concept of defending this forward line so much harder. But I mean, we won, so we can talk about it, as I said.
And it was a quality 8 goals that Carlton kicked despite that assistance, so it's always nice.
Well, six of them from frees, I think.
Yeah, free kicks or 50s, yeah.
That's right, and
it's
unbelievable. But
I think you're right.
Same thing happened when we played them last year too.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think you're right though about Jade Gresham. I think we all kind of had a bit of a crack at Gresh last week, but I think he did bounce back. He had some moments which I think you just have to expect. You're going to get some bad with the good, but I think you're right. It was probably his best game for the year, Jade Gresham. Outside of a couple of those moments, that kick off the side of the boot coming down the wing. I mean, that was pretty hard to watch. And at that point, I think that was still fairly early in the game. At that point, you're thinking he's gone next week. He's out of the team. But he turned it around. To his credit, he worked hard. He chased. He harassed. He ran, and he did some little things that I guess we haven't been used to seeing Jade Gresham do, which was promising.
Looking at some votes out of that, I thought something like this might be coming one day, obviously, with our 10-vote system. And this was probably, in my mind, our most even performance of the year, where, there have been times where we've had one or two standouts, like Higgins kicking 5 or Mason Wood against Essendon, our defenders last week against Collingwood, that type of thing. But I've actually gone the 10-1s, and there's still some hard luck stories. Apologies to Gresham, who we mentioned earlier. Real big apologies to Owens, who was unbelievable. And an apology even to Membry to a degree. I thought his comeback match was pretty solid. But I gave a vote to Sinclair. If anyone was BOG, it was probably him. A vote to Marshall, important in the ruck again. Burns, as I said, best game he's played. Crouch, just for his handy touches, didn't get a stack of it, but he's amazing at evading tackles with just one step, where he'll turn left or right, and you just sort of can't catch him. Mason Wood, I've watched the replay a couple of times, and his game gets better each time you watch it. Seb Ross putting together a good year. First votes for me for Dougal Howard. I thought he held up pretty well down back. Vote to Butler, important 3 goals. Vote to Brad Hill for his creativity, and a vote to Jack Steele for negating Cripps in the second half, coming back from injury. So they're my 10-1s. Which one of you wants to pick it up?
You can go, Nick. Yep.
All right. Pretty similar to you, Parker. I gave an apology to Jack Steele just for the job that he did in the second half and taking that role kind of head on, knowing that he was probably a bit underdone and struggling a bit to kind of keep Cripps quiet or not as impactful in the second half was a massive move and went a huge way, especially early in that third, to kind of turning the tide. And like you said, Tim Membry, I think what goes unspoken, I think, is his footy IQ. It's not just his skill and his running ability and the kicking for goal and all that sort of stuff, but his footy IQ to understand where he needs to be and when is almost second to none, I think, on our footy team. Maybe Cal Wilkie from a defensive perspective, but Tim Embry from a forward perspective is certainly his even in that mark. I gave 2 votes to Jack Sinclair. I thought he was clearly the best player on the ground, especially in the second half, and was another key member of that group that kind of turned the tide. I gave 1 vote to Mitch Owens, 1 to Clark, who I thought just keeps growing week on week at the moment, and looks like a really important part of our engine room now. Rowan Marshall, I thought, was very solid. Brad Hill never stopped running. HU and I spoke about this off air earlier. I think the way that he's playing is probably the best defensive effort footy of his career for a guy that's been in the system for 10 or 11 years and won a best and fairest and won a couple of flags. That's pretty important. Seb Ross, like you said, Darren, is playing some of his best footy at the moment as well. Dan Butler, Mason Wood, and Dougal Howard round out the ones. But like you said, such an even performance. It was, outside of Jack Sinclair, really hard to find a standout for me.
Yeah, so it's probably a good order that we've done that in. Actually, Darren gave votes to 10 players, Nick did them to 9. I'm getting them to 8. So it's I couldn't split Sinclair's second half and Brad Hill's game, both getting 2 votes. The one thing that a lot of people won't see from Brad Hill's game that will have watched it at home is the running that he does off the ball. The running to get to position, the running to chase someone down. He comes from so far away in some situations that the effort he is putting in off the ball is huge. He's had his noggers. He's had people saying he's not up to it. But tell you what, the amount of effort he puts into it, it's unbelievable at times. I think it was the one, as I was saying to Nick earlier, the smother, he attempted smother in the last quarter. The ball landed in the player's hand, and when it got into his hand, I think he was about 25 metres away. In the time he turned around and kicked the ball, he almost got to him. He just put the foot down and went. It's quite crazy to see it when you're there and just seeing the effort he puts in. So it was a well-deserved, unlucky to only be 2 votes probably, but as I say, there's so many this week. So 2 Sinclair and Hill, then go one to Owens, Clark, Marshall, Ross, Butler and Crouch. Many apologies. We've put 12 different players in together this week. There could have been easily 15 to 18 players that could have polled. It's just such an even performance across the board. And, hopefully we can have this problem most weeks. And that'd be a really good a good problem to have.
That's right. I'm happy with the 10, but I'm disappointed that I didn't give Clark or Owens votes, and even Gresham probably as well. So, it goes to show. And obviously you want those performances. You need some standouts, obviously, to win some of those big games if you get someone with a breakout performance. But, a step in the right direction for Membry and Steele and those types of players. A reminder too, and certainly appreciate our listener numbers of recent times. If you are enjoying the podcast as much as you're enjoying this season, you can leave us a review across our various platforms, iTunes, Facebook, or wherever you listen, Spotify, etc. We've been floating around the top 15 rated podcasts for the categories of sport and footy over the course of the year, which is great. We want to keep that going, and we've got all our social content. We're pretty busy on match days, obviously, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, so check all of that out. There'll be snippets from these interviews and a lot of the special guests that we have on and have had on over the journey, and it's a nice segue, and we like to tell the stories certainly of a lot of the big name players and a lot of the contributors across the journey, and tell some stories from players that you might not have heard from for a little while. And one of those was a bit of an early 90s cult hero in Gordon Fode.
Here's Dean Gregg, just back on the ground. He's been reported. Off to Robert Harvey. Short pass is good, and Fode marks in front of McCurry. And if Gordon Fode could manage a goal out of this, would this be tough for the Premiers?
He fancies this himself, Drew, when he's been in this position earlier in the game. He's had a shot and he's definitely lining up again. He'll make the distance. It'll just be a question of accuracy.
He's been a great player today because he's set a few goals up with his physical presence up there.
Great lead. He hits the ball hard, doesn't he?
And worked very, very hard.
He is into the breeze, but he kicked his only 2 goals for the game at this end in the second quarter. The margin at the moment is 19 in favour of St Kilda. Gordon Fode from 49 metres. Oh, it's a goal! This looks like being a ball over of huge proportions.
Well, our next guest on Unplugged for 2023 played 52 games for the Saints between 1988 and 1995. He was an athletic prodigy coming through as a junior and was a part of that strong St Kilda side of the early 90s. Kicked plenty of goals towards the back end of 93, had a couple of good days against the Bombers, certainly early in 94 as well, and a very talented player, very talented athlete. And Gordon Fode is who I speak of. Gordon, thanks very much for your time.
Thanks, guys. Darren, Aaron, and Nick, pleasure to be here.
Starting off with that background as a junior, you played a lot of sports, you showed a lot of potential in a lot of different areas. Was it always footy, or was there a chance that you might have been pulled in different directions?
Oh, look, you're spot on. I mean, when you're a kid, you just obviously want to play as many sports as you can out there and test the grounds. And obviously I had a lot of coaches at school at St Leonard's College days in East Brighton that sort of approached me in different areas and just said, come along and have a try at this type of sport. So yeah, it was a great opportunity for me to test different sports. I started off doing athletics, tennis, and a lot of soccer. Basically, they were the three top sports, and then jumped into snow skiing, and as you do, a bit of golf, as you do, and then this funny shaped ball came into my lap about 14. Never touched the ball in my life until I sort of met two other skinny blokes under John Beveridge recruiting system, and that was Robert Harvey, Brad Pearce, and Brett Bowie and Jason Daniels in the under-19s, in the under-15 development squad back then, when Trevor Barker and I think Gary Colling and Daryl Nisbet was the under-19s coach as well. So that was the old regime, yeah.
What was it like? What was it like coming through with those guys? I mean, there's some pretty accomplished players in that team, and you played with some other guys through your kind of junior years leading up to your senior debut in 88. But what was it like? I guess you said you'd never touched the ball until you were 14 or so. What was it like kind of learning the game with those guys?
Yeah, that's a good question, Nick. A lot of young kids develop late in sport, not necessarily early in sport. So I think my background from soccer, tennis, athletics gave me, as you guys mentioned before, a lot of athletic sports background to come into this environment. The only thing was I didn't know anything about this rules of the game, of Aussie rules. So it was really something new to me. I struggled a little bit being a young 14, 15-year-old. It was a good environment back then because we had a lot of junior guys through John Beveridge recruiting and of course, Gary Colling, Daryl Nisbet days. But certainly the transition was something that I just had to adapt to slowly. And you know what? It was more of a culture thing back then, and we tended to learn a lot about those days in sense of where it is today is pretty much an environment where you're a young fella coming into an older group of men teaching you how to play this game of Aussie rules, and the likes of, like I said, Trevor Barker and Danny Frawley and Nicky Winmar and Lowy and Nathan Burke, of course, and then you had guys like Joffa Cunningham, Robert Elphingston, you had guys like Greg Burns, and the likes of all those late 80 players. So it was really good. It was a learning experience. It just took off from there, I guess.
So you've just mentioned John Beveridge, and I guess he's was the catalyst behind getting you to the club. But what was the process that you basically went through with him getting into the team and basically starting a senior career with the club?
Well, that's a very good question, Aaron. I had a knock on the door when I was about 14 at off South Road there, when the good old days was zoning areas to Moorabbin. So I lived only 5 minutes away off South Road in the Nepean Highway. Had a knock on the door, and Mum answered the door, and this gentleman sort of introduced himself. My name's John Beveridge from St Kilda Football Club, and I was sitting on the TV watching a bit of, obviously, sport, and my mum never knew nothing about this bloke. he's just walked up and introduced himself and said, "Look, we've got a opportunity for your son, Gordon Fode, to come down and do a trial with our under-15 squad." And I guess from there, it sort of eventuated. But my mother never wanted me to go to the Aussie rules side of things. She hated the game. God bless her. It's 1 year today she passed away, but she's been a strong backbone of my influence of trying other sports and having a go, basically. But yeah, John's he was the guy who basically took the tennis racket and the soccer ball out of my hands and my feet, and the rest is history.
Is it kind of ironic, as I understand it, I think you would have crossed paths with Shane Warne in the under-19s as well, that obviously you came from a multi-sports background, and two of the blokes that you played with, one was Robert Harvey, who was a phenomenal cricketer but ended up being a better footballer, and Shane Warne, who could play a bit of footy, ended up being an unbelievable cricketer. What was the experience like with Warney back then?
Oh, look, as most of the other guys have mentioned, he was one of the guys that always wanted to lead like Pluggo out of the square, but he didn't want to run fast. He had this great tenacity like Pluggo, just reading the play where it's coming into the inside 50, and most of the guys knew exactly what he wanted, and he kicked plenty of goals in opportunities in under-19s, and Jason Warne was his brother. We're still good mates. We catch up when we see each other or stay in touch on social media. And there was a lot of guys through the Peninsula area. That obviously Justin Peck and Spider came through later, and under-19s was pretty powerful group in the decades of 87, 88, 89, and 1990. So you had a great group of 10 to 15 players each year that are sort of debuting at a young stage between 18 to 21, 22, 23 back then, which gave the club an opportunity to see what the youth could do in the area. So no doubt you've got your names and players that have come through in the areas of which they've played so many games.
You made your senior debut in the last round of 88. What are your memories of that day?
Yeah, coming off the bench, Darryl Bulldog was my first coach. And I remember coming off the bench at Waverley. We played Essendon. It was a real wet, rainy, heavy day. It was the last round. I think it was round 22, and I picked up this guy on the wing. And all I do remember, as I don't remember names, but I remember numbers. So I had the runner, I think it was Barry Bazenko, or could have been someone else, I can't remember, run out to me and said, "Fode, do you know where that bloke you're supposed to be playing on is? He's off the wing. He's inside the 50. You got to keep up with him." And I said, "I'm doing my best, but he's swapping over with another player." Which is Mark Harvey, and the bloke that I was missing out on was Tim Watson. So my first ever player was Timmy, and I actually, my first kick of footy was inside the 50. I think it was Rocket Owen. He spotted me running through off the flank there and inside the 50, and went back at a kick. I thought, yeah, this is going sailing through. The kick through the ball, head over, as they normally say. And it's just gone out of bounds on the full, and I've just looked at myself going, that's just not right, Gordon.
Moving to 1989, actually play all 22 matches of this season. But one match stands out to us, that against Footscray, you snagged 2 Brownlow votes, 12 touches, and yeah, not Majolton today, but... Tell us the story how you've ended up with those 2 votes.
Well, to be honest with you, I was actually sitting on the bench that time, and Barks, Trevor was playing down back. I remember he got collected, and whether he got the heavy ball was a really heavy, muddy, rainy day out at Waverley, and I remember he got cleaned up really, really badly, and then they had to get the stretcher out. So then, obviously, my call was to get up and replace down the back, back pocket, and I just basically came on and did whatever I had to do to keep the ball from going through the defence. And I guess it was a bad, ugly day. I do remember that, but I was very fortunate, lucky to get those 2 Brownlow votes from the back line.
Yeah, I was trying to work out which forward it was you were actually playing on the day, because I was looking through who their goal kickers were in that, and Ryan Royal was their highest goal kicker at that point. Who'd you actually take?
Yeah, no, you're spot on. There was Royal, but it was also Dougie Hawkins I was playing on. So Dougie was floating up in the half forward and forward area and inside his 50 arc, and I noticed that I got told to pick up him as well. So there was couple of players, but gee, I'll tell you, that was a heavy, dark day out at Waverley, and it was a very muddy, heavy day. I reckon the ball was like a brick, the way you had to kick it. So it didn't go very far.
Your third game of AFL football, arguably St Kilda's most famous win of the 80s, beating Carlton in round 2 when Plugger kicks 10 on Silvani. We win in the last 40 seconds. As a young player who'd only played a couple of games, was that the ultimate sort of, this is VFL footy, but this is AFL footy. This is a packed Moorabbin against a big club. Pluggers going berserk, crowds going nuts. Was that kind of a welcome to footy?
Yeah, Darren, you're spot on. Look, everyone that remembers that particular year and that particular round at 29,000 packed at Moorabbin, and Plugger playing, I think he kicked 11-7 on Silvani, correct me if I'm wrong. It was just one of those days where we were playing in a grand final against the best of Carlton's side, and you did have the royalty of premiership players in Carlton that day, and the likes of Wayne Johnston Dominator. I was playing on pretty much. I was playing on Glascott. I was playing on Fraser Murphy, and then I got those 3 was sort of changing on me every time. Look, it was a great game, and it is one of my favourite all-time games to watch. When I have a chance to show my little daughters the game at Moorabbin, because it meant a lot to us coming back from behind. And I remember the last 60 seconds, the ball goes out of bounds on the back flank, and Jamie Lamb, I think, handballs it across to it was Sheldon, and Sheldon gives it across to, I think it was Daniels. Jack decided to not kick it, but give a 30-metre handball straight to Cuz, and Cuz just did a nice little 8-iron into Plugger, and the countdown was 43 seconds on the clock, and we're sort of wondering how long is this game going, and the big fella just went back, poised himself, took a breath, and I think a few of the boys got around him just to let him know there was less than a second or 2 on the clock, and the goal umpire didn't even move, believe it or not. He just looked up, straight up. He did not move his feet, the goal umpire, and then the whole crowd just jumped the fence. And those days, you just can't relive those memories. They're great memories.
I mean, you were only a young bloke throughout that season, but the club was at 6-4 after 10 weeks that season, then went on to lose 10 straight. Are you able to put your finger on kind of what went wrong at that point?
Yeah, look, there was obviously in that time we had a lot of a lot of guys that were struggling with a few injuries, but we had a list of great names. And when you look at all the names on the list that we had to go through, you'd think would be in a top 5 position, top 6 position. But yeah, certainly everyone knows that it was coming to the end of and Doc wasn't feeling well. He was sick too. To be fair, I remember being a young kid. There were the stories that were going around, and we just wanted to just prove to everyone that we're capable of knocking off these top 4, 5, 6 teams on the ladder in '89, but I think Doc just got pretty crook. Things weren't going well in certain areas on the field and certain areas off the field. But us guys, we stood together. We had each other's backs. We always were there for one another, and they were the good times. But certainly, it was hard when you don't have many. And the facilities, by the way, I think talking to a few of the players and listening to your previous podcasts with a few of the past players, the facilities they've got today compared to what we had was, just totally different. And we didn't worry about that too much, but we just had to do what we do best. And as I said, you look at the names on the list, you'd think by looking at all those great players on the list, we would have been a good top 8 for sure.
Did you have a sense of those kind of the differences in the facilities? I mean, we've spoken to a few people about that, but as a player, did you have a sense of the discrepancy between what we had at Moorabbin and our footy club and what a Collingwood or a Carlton or an Essendon had?
Oh, no doubt, Nick. The facilities at other football clubs at that point in time were going into the next phase of the 1990s after '89. And we all knew that some clubs had better equipment and facilities of equipment to improve on their games and their off-season fitness and conditioning and strength and weights and things like that. So look, we struggled a little bit, but we modified our whatever we could do in fairness to what it was. And then Ken Sheldon took over after Doc stepped down in '89, and to Ken Sheldon's credit, and I know that for a couple of years there, we turned it around from the bottom straight up in the finals, 1990, 91, 92. The club went straight into the top 4, top 5 for finals, playoffs, and quarters and semis. So we turned it around very quickly. And a lot of people forget that in that little era that Ken Sheldon and the management of the club on and off the field did a great job. And then, of course, later in 93, 94, Stan Elves came in from a skills point of view and took over from Kenny Sheldon and then took it all the way through to 97 in the grand final. Obviously, I was at Hawthorn at the back end when I retired at 96, 97. 96, I left 95. St Kilda to go to Hawthorn in 96 centenary for 1 year. I mean, that was an experience and a journey in itself because you still had the Dunstalls, Chenky, Pritchard, Plattons, Gary. I think Langford was living in Sydney and still turning up to matches. And then I'd see the flip side of the coin of what a premiership side with plenty of cups in the cabinet, of course, but they also had their struggles where they kept a lot of the 80s players a little bit too late in the 90s. But I had the likes of Angelo Lekis and Chris Holland, Dutchy Holland, and I think it was Crawford as well coming through. So it was a great experience.
So as we were saying before, 89 played every game. But then 90, 91, 92, you only managed 4 games throughout the entire 3 seasons. You just speaking about the, facilities and the, injury management and that sort of thing. But through that period of time, what were the issues? And do you think with, the facilities that there are today, do you think you might have got more games in that period?
Oh, look, yeah, no doubt. Aaron, I know that a lot of guys were, in those days, training hard on the track, and the track used to be just all mud and raining. And guys would be going out there doing all sorts of crazy exercises. Their hamstrings and quads would be sore coming off training midweek, and then you're going into a big game on the weekend, you're very sore. So I had problems with my hamstrings, running off a lot of issues in that period of a couple of years. My hamstrings, I think I torn twice. And then eventually the period where I got back into the football, thanks to Peter Thomas, former physio that I still see today, of the club. And Ken Sheldon sat me down. He says, all right, this is what we've got to do with you and get yourself sorted because, you've missed a lot of football during this period of time. Let's get you back on the field where you belong. So, I went away. I spent about a month doing a lot of court running at Dendy Park and outside work. So I moved away from the boys for about 4 weeks, had a program set for myself, and then I came back in a lot stronger, ready for 1993.
Obviously, 93, the move forward. You kicked 4 against North early in the year. Plugger would miss a lot of footy that year. There was yourself, Stuart Lowe, Craig O'Brien spent a bit of time forward as well. So it was a different kind of setup. You kicked 5 goals, 9 late in the year against Geelong with 14 marks, 4 against Sydney, 5 against Essendon the following year. It did seem to agree with you that move forward and give you a bit of a new lease on life.
Yes, look, certainly, Darren, coming off the back of halfback flank and then moving, I think Stan gave me the opportunity as well as Ken Sheldon to look at a 3-4 prong attack. So there was Plugger, myself, Craig O'Brien, Spider, Everett, and Lowy, and we'd sort of circulate and make a prong attack where we take a little bit of pressure off, Plugger, and then suddenly Spider or Lowy or myself or Obi, Craig O'Brien would sort of, have more options of play, and then suddenly we bring back Plugger in the play. So it gave the opposition a bit of a mixture of handful of tactical, moves from the coaching point of view, playing forward. And it did give me a lot of opportunity. I don't mind playing at back line. Defense has been most of my life where I began football. But up forward, it's great. You got to turn the thing around sometimes. You got to think of outside the square and sometimes think that you're not just a forward player, but you're also a defense player to keep the ball inside that 50 as well.
We spoke earlier about the famous game in '89 against Carlton at Moorabbin, but '93 saw another very famous game. We've just had the 30-year anniversary of Vic Park against Collingwood. You kicked 4 points for the game. What are your memories of that day at Vic Park?
Yeah, look, Nick, that was one of the toughest games I've ever come off a field. My body was bruised. Playing, I think it was on Craig Kelly and can't remember the other gentleman's name, but yeah, certainly from the bounce at Victoria Park, it was on. We couldn't hear anyone, couldn't hear our cheer squad. It was hard. It was really hard. It was just us against them, and it was a great game. Gilbert, McAdam, Nicky, Dean Gregg. I know Spud set the scene actually in terms of coming out of these knocking out Christensen, I think it might have been, and that set the scene a little bit more. And we just sort of, it was just grinding away every quarter. I think the most thing that I can remember is that our tackles was very high, 45 plus, 46, whatever it was in total. And Kenny Sheldon just wanted us to just put our foot down and say, look, we're not leaving this ground until we come home with the chocolates. So it was a matter of just getting the job done and going home straight away.
Another game that just jumps out occasionally that we'd see the replay come up pretty often, up in Sydney, the game that was on Mother's Day. I do remember that being out and about, and I guess it got to the point of 3/4 time and thought, okay, we're not going to watch the end of this and get home and realise we've won. What was the messaging that you got, I guess, at the 3/4 time, and was there still some sort of belief that we can still win this game, and or did Tony just go, just kick it to me?
Yeah, no, Aaron, that was a amazing quarter and a bit. We were, I think, 58 points down, going from the back end of the third quarter into the last quarter, and look, body language. Some of the players we thought we were totally gone. And then we just got into a huddle, and I remember a few words were said, and the word that came out was pride. Just lift yourself, give something. If the better team's playing than you, that's fine, but you've got to give some sort of effort and have some pride. So I think after that, we didn't have to worry about it because all we wanted to do, like you said, was kick it down to Plugger, and he'd basically do the rest, which he did. And Dean Gregg, to his credit, and I think Berkey and a few others in the middle halves, they were getting the ball out really well, and I think there was a couple other young blokes that were playing that day as well.
Looking, obviously mentioned your career where you went to Hawthorn briefly at the end of that journey. Then you went and played a bit of soccer and obviously dabbled in some of those other sports as well. When we had events like a few weeks ago against Essendon at the MCG, where a lot of the past players come back for the 150th celebration, how does it make you feel, I guess, as a player who's written a chapter in the career of a football club that's that old, with that passionate a supporter base, with that many great players and that many great stories, to be able to sit there with 70,000 at the MCG and share some of those stories with those sorts of guys and reflect on the fact that you were a part of it?
Oh, look, Darren, it's one of the best things the club has ever done. The organisation build up for that particular day, and just the fact that we are very honoured as past players to be closer to the club. I think the club's opened up now and got more past players on board with today's players and the facilities of the club, Danny Frawley Centre, and everything else that's been built by the club, and I think they've done a wonderful job. And that day means a lot to all of the past players. We're just very honoured and privileged to be putting on the red, white and black. And whether you've played one game or whether you've played 400, doesn't matter. I think what we sort of got out of it was that it was great to see smiling faces from Anita Frawley, Chelsea Frawley there, alongside guys that I played along with, Damien Shaw, for example, that came also from St Leonard's College. He was a year below me, and Danny Craven came down from Queensland, and so it was great to see everyone there, and it was a great day, especially having a win on the day as well.
I want to go back to a period that you were out. We kind of touched on that period that you missed a lot of footy with injury, but the 1991 finals run, obviously kind of drought-breaking finals appearance, the first time in many, many years. But what was it like watching that from the sidelines in the rehab group?
Oh, look, it was buzzing. I remember, the first time that we looked at each other and said, well, we're playing finals football here, guys. We're not packing up, going on holidays, thinking about where we're going at the end of season football trip. It was one of those things where, we can take on West Coast, we can take on Collingwood, we can take on Essendon or Hawthorn, and the likes of all the other teams. And I think, like you said, it was a journey of looking at how the transition we've come from the bottom and then moved to play top teams in 1991 and 92.
Now, a lot of people probably wouldn't realise that, you retired at 27, but then you had an attempt at a comeback at a different sport. What's the story about your attempt at going back to soccer? And as I've read, your father played in the National League, going back before when you were younger. But what led to you deciding to try to give that a shot?
Oh, look, Aaron, I sort of looked at two things. One was where I am at, I could have played an extra 5 years of my life with AFL. The old man came to me and actually he proposed a little proposal in work, and we decided to go importing food and wine and beverage. At the same time, Dad had a delicatessen at South Melbourne Market. So that was around the 95, 96 mark. And I finished up at 96 at the back end with Hawthorn. And he just came to me and says, all right, what do you want to do? I'm going overseas to see these suppliers. You can do the sales and managing accounts, and I'll I'll set up this little wholesale importing business. In the meantime, he said, if you still want to play a sport, come down to Como Park in South Yarra and play with us boys on a Sunday for a couple of hours, and the little goals as they do, and then they have a barbecue and a few beers and have a barbecue later. From there, it eventuated, and someone spoke and said, your son's got a bit of talent with the round ball still. Why don't you get him to go down to Melbourne Knights or Chelsea Haydock? Funny that. Then next day, phone rings. You're down there. You're mucking around with this round ball now, and these guys looking at you going, "Didn't you just come out of AFL football?" And I said, "Yeah." They turn around and say, "Well, what are you doing here?" He goes, "Well, this is the game I got brought up on when I was 5 or 6." So I said, "Look, I'm just here to have a crack and see where it takes me." So I trained Melbourne Knights for about 3 months off season, and then came back and played with Chelsea Haydock at the time. Vlado Varnish, I think, rang me up and said, "Come down and I want you in the team." And the boys from there, it was just a bit of fun and a bit of exercise. So yeah.
The final one from me, it's funny, small world. Depends if you can trust Wikipedia with this stuff as well. But the first time I've actually read this particular story. But one of the other famous names at St Kilda that was there a few weeks ago at the MCG was Neil Roberts. Now, as you mentioned that your mum couldn't stand footy, she was a very good swimmer, but she was coached by Neil Roberts. Is that right? For a period?
That is correct, Darren. Mum was up there in Fitzroy area as a young girl in school, Northcote area or Fitzroy, and her PE swimming coach was Neil Roberts. And Mum was a great diver and a backstroke swimmer, and she won a lot of her championships for school. And Neil, I spoke to him about that the other day actually, and we'd never spoke of it. I shared the story, and he appreciated it. So yeah, it's a small world. So yeah, and just going back on what Aaron said about my father, Dad. Mark, my father, was a goalkeeper for Footscray Just in South Melbourne at the NSL days, which is obviously A-League today. And I went down to the South Melbourne club the other day to watch some of the girls play, and I bumped into a gentleman who Dad played with. He was a legend down there. His name's Jimmy Armstrong. And he turned around to me and says, "Do you know that your father still holds the record in the NSL, which is the A-League today?" I said, "No, Jimmy, tell me. What's the record?" He goes, "As a goalkeeper, your father has kept a clean sheet for 11 games in a row, not one ball in the back of the net." And at that time, I think it was the late 60s, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73 era, they won like 4 or 5 Doherty championship cups in Olympic Park and a few other places. And he shared some stories with me. So I thought that was nice.
So, Gordon, the important question now on the topic of soccer: are you Victory or City? What side of Melbourne are you on?
Oh, Nick, look, I support all clubs. I'm not one. I'm not a. Honestly, I support all the. I even support Western United. Have come a long way with what they've done with the women new team, and also the senior team with Aloisi being the coach of last year's premiership. Look. We've got a great opportunity to see I'll showcase the World Cup's coming to Australia, boys, and it's the women.
Yep.
So you're gonna actually see a lot of great talent around the world come into Australia this June, July, I think it is. They're all the games that are actually being played all around Australia. So I think it's a great opportunity not only for the game itself, but also for women and girls to get excited about another code of sport, which is worldwide, and it'll attract revenue, it'll attract business and everything else. So it's a huge thing to host a World Cup sport.
Sneaky chance to win it too. They're a very good side, our women. So.
Yeah, they are, Darren. I've got a few connections with a few friends of mine with the Matildas. My daughter's currently captain playing NPL at Bayside United, where Bentley Greens is. She's in the under-15 development squad, Amelia, and she's enjoying it at the moment. She met a few girls that are now playing senior level, and she's just enjoying the ride, enjoying the journey at the moment.
Now, we've got one question we're throwing at everyone that comes on this year with the 150th year. As a moment, you've probably already touched on it today, being the game with player kicking the winning goal and that sort of thing. But to throw it at you in the way of what is the St Kilda Football Club to you? What does it mean to you, just as a person, as a player, as even a supporter now?
Oh, look, it's on the crest of the logo. Really, it's the strength, loyalty, and the passion that the club has within the people, the fans, the membership. You wear the red, white, and black for a reason. You run out there and you give it all, 110%, and that's all you can do. And you play for one another. When you, like the guys are playing right now, I can sense it that they're playing for one another. It's a unified, bonding group of players that are playing under Ross Lyon, Robert Harvey, and the likes of the rest of the past players that are coaching at the moment. So, Aaron, it's strength and loyalty and passion for the club. And as I said to you guys, one game or 400 doesn't matter. You're part of the journey. You're part of the club.
Well, Gordon, you played some very good footy for the Saints, and we appreciate you sharing some stories along the way. And you've been a terrific guest, and we wish you well with everything going forward.
No worries, Darren, Nick, and Aaron. Thanks very much for having me.
Gordon Fode, who played some excellent games that I remember as a young supporter. The game against Essendon in early '94 was one of those. So it's interesting. Before we get to some of the listener questions, we'll segue into the Port Adelaide clash. Now, obviously, every St Kilda supporter would be aware of the bogey nature of Port Adelaide for us, and last year was a clear example of that, where we got beaten by them in Cairns, kicked 4 goals, 18. Obviously, we get them at Marvel now. It's a 5-day break. I mean, they've got a 6-day break travelling interstate and some injuries, losing guys like Marshall and Farrell and Georgiades, who has hurt us a bit in the past, got injured in the twos, so he obviously can't come in. They might get Charlie Dixon back, but it is a real... Yeah, absolutely. It's a real... he got suspended, but it's a real, not sliding doors moment, but you almost get confronted with the same scenario from last year. We kept saying last year, geez, I wish we had that game at Marvel with all the momentum that we had, and should have won it anyway, but here we are. We've got them at Marvel. It's a Friday night. We've been screaming out for that. We're on top of the ladder. Got all of the momentum. I think we've got North Melbourne and Hawthorn in the weeks following that, so we can really get on a roll with a match like this. And it feels different, and it feels like we're obviously ready to take that opportunity. But I think anyone who's played sport, you often feel that when you shake those bogeys, it means that you're in for a good year. I remember playing football back in the day. For those familiar with Gippsland, we never used to beat Thorpedale, who were never that good. My side, Hill Ends, just couldn't beat them, particularly up there, for any reason at all. And then there was one year where we'd won 3 or 4 in a row and then played them at their ground and beat them by 10 goals in the rain. And I remember us all thinking, oh, shit, I think we're all right. And I don't know if anyone remembers, I think we were watching it together, a lot of us, in 2009, the Anzac Eve clash where we played Port Adelaide in round 5. That was at Footy Park. I reckon we were watching it at like the London Tavern or something like that.
Right.
And we gave them an absolute pasting. And I remember thinking, shit, if we're doing that, then we're fair income. So I think this is one of those ones where if you just say, I don't give a shit about bogey sides, I don't give a shit about bad history, we beat Port by 7 goals, then, that's a bit of an indication that we're all right. I mean, they're in reasonable form, but they're not in super form, despite the fact they've won 3 in a row. So, it's there for us, and it's a chance for us to say bogeys don't mean shit.
Just before I do head to the game Friday, it is in Marvel, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, it's a rarity, that one. So, but as you're saying, yeah, if that game had been in there last year, we may have had a completely different season. Something happened that night that just changed us. And I mean, one, Hunter Clark was a big thing. It seemed to be they knocked him out and knocked the wind out of us, and the game just changed from. Oh, I'm thinking about the game in there, or is that the Adelaide game I was thinking of?
Either way, they're all disastrous.
Yeah, there was something in that game that it just changed the whole momentum, the whole game, and
I think we kicked 14 points in a row at one stage.
But basically, we felt in control, and then the Clark was against Adelaide. Now I remember, but we felt in control that night still, and all of a sudden, Robbie Gray's finding space, and the ground just opened up, and they were hitting targets. But if we got it back, we wouldn't hit a target. We'd kick it straight back to them again, and things that weren't happening earlier in the game. It just didn't feel right as soon as we came out in the second half, and as we know, it just all fell over, and we just I still can't forgive Dougal for not running up to Robbie Gray and just giving him that space. It
wasn't a time to peel off.
That's the part of the game that is burnt in my mind. That if he just goes up and spoils that or meets him, he's got to kick around him. He's got to. So it's a lesson that is to be learnt there, and we now have him in our home ground, and hopefully we can look at it and go, that's. Let's make it our ground. Let's make it our home. Let's get this win this time and follow on from what we have started. Let's not let this year
first time since 2013 that we've played them at Marvel with a crowd. We obviously played them 2 years ago at Marvel, but in front of no one. So first time in a decade we have a home game against Port Adelaide in front of our own supporters.
Yep. As I said, I just wanted to double check.
I mean, you talk about some of those names that are out for Port, and I think it would be easy for us to kind of go, hang on, this should be an easy game for us to win with those guys out. But there's still a fair amount of talent on that Port squad. I mean,
especially in the middle.
Yeah, look at some of those guys like Connor Rosie, and obviously Travis Boak's a superstar. Darcy Byrne-Jones is a quality player. Ollie Wines, Dersma. There's a bunch of them. Alir is their version of Cal Wilkie. There's plenty of talent on that Port team, but if we hit our straps, then I'm not sure that they can keep up with us in a number of ways. And we've spoken about kind of our defensive abilities and teams not kicking more than 60 points or whatever it is, 8 goals against us, 10 goals against us. I think we average 59.5 points scored against, which is very, very low. But even things like some of the changes that we've seen over the course of this year, going from last or close to last in the way that we move the ball to ranked first in ball movement, moving from defense to offense, scoring from turnovers, a bunch of these things that are so important that we just haven't been good at for a period of time. And then you add in, kind of, I guess that solidness, the accountability, the understanding of what everyone's role is and the structure and all those types of things that we've spoken about over the last month or so that Ross has brought in. If we play our game, then we can beat pretty much anyone at the moment.
Yeah, and I think even today, watching the Anzac Day game, it almost gave a little bit more confidence out of the Collingwood game, because their modus operandi has been to just run teams off their feet. Did it all of last year and all of this year, and it's why they keep coming from behind. It's just they run all day. They're probably the best team in the comp, unfortunately. But it was us that was outrunning them late, which is reinforcement that what we're doing is actually working. I know we didn't quite get them, but today certainly didn't dampen the thoughts coming out of that. But interesting, H, on the selection point, because most of the midfield's in form. But look, Billings played the first 3 quarters, so 22 possessions and 3 goals. Didn't play the last. Now 5-day break for out of Sandy into St Kilda. So I don't know whether it's managed minutes and he was only ever going to play 3 quarters, or it was 3 quarters, hold him over in the event that you're going to use him on Friday night. Bytel, 39 touches, 9 clearances. Couldn't have done much more at that level. But again, whose spot does he take? Does he go back in as the sub in place of Windhager? Does Windhager hold on to that spot? Is Billings the sub? It's interesting which way. You'd think it's one of those 3 players that probably gets it. In terms of vulnerable midfielders, you would have thought Burns, but he played, as I said, I think his best game. Gresham did enough to stay in the lineup, so it's a tricky one all round. Keep an eye on Peris as well. We briefly spoke to him last year when we had a chat to his mum. He's going really well at Sandy. Obviously, our small forwards are in pretty good form, but if they weren't, or one of them got injured, he wouldn't be a million miles away. He's been named emergency repeatedly. So that's an interesting one as well. But H, do you envisage any change or any change to the sub even?
You wouldn't think so. You don't look at anyone sort of on the weekend and think they've done anything wrong to be dropped. It would come down to a matchup thing or a player maybe not coming up this week. Someone might be feeling a bit sore. I mean, how has Jack pulled up? Is he pulled up well? Is he ready to go again after only 5 days? Because we've heard people saying that they've had that injury and couldn't do anything for 3 months. So it's whether he's managed this week and to give him the week after, or I don't see much more happening apart from that. I mean, Bytel would be unlucky to not be getting a game, putting out those numbers, but at the same time, it is a step up. He was going all right before he has gone back to the VFL, but it's just that we don't want to break that, I guess, the momentum we've got with that group that's in there at the moment. I mean, Windhager was the sub, but he's come on and he did a few good things. If you spread that time out that he actually played and went over an entire game, he probably has a pretty good game. So it's anyone that does get dropped this week is very unlucky. But before this week, Gresham was probably the number 1 on the chopping block. He's probably given himself some time now, but he's probably still only that one bad game away from having a spell. So unless there's someone managed this week, I don't really see much happening.
There might be some. I mean, Windhager out to go and play a full game and get some miles in the legs could be an option. I mean, we spoke about kind of game time off air, H, just before we started recording. But at the Collingwood game, he played 56% game time or something, and then came on the sub. Last week, he only played kind of the last quarter. Does someone like him, who's a young kid developing and growing his game, need to get some miles in his legs? Like, does he need? I think, in my opinion, and I'm no expert, I'm no Ross Lyon, but does he need kind of time to work his way into a game to kind of play full games in a row and then come back into the seniors?
Possibly, yeah. I mean, he was flying in the pre-season, then obviously got injured in the first minute of that Essendon practice match, and just hasn't quite been able to hit those straps again. It's interesting because he's almost an ideal sub in that he's a good runner, he can tag, and he can win clearances. So at various points, he's influential. But yeah, I don't know whether he just needs the confidence of getting 35 in a VFL.
Yeah, to add to that, the Sandy don't actually play this week, so there's I guess an issue that we can't push anyone back to have a go. But anyone we do drop will actually miss out a game this week. So you do get dropped, you're actually going to find it hard to.
Does anyone know why Cooper Sharman didn't play last week at all?
I think it was held over as an emergency.
He was one of the holdovers for us, yeah.
Okay. Because I thought, given Sandy played on the morning of St Kilda, I thought if they knew early enough, they could have played him, but there must have been some doubt very late.
We had a feeling there might have been a change when we heard that he didn't play. But nothing sort of eventuated. He's not really a replacement for Steele unless Windhager was the one that was going to come in for Steele and he then became the sub or something. But otherwise,
it's probably only memory, maybe.
Possibly as well. But I think he was pretty well ready to go. So
didn't even have any strapping on from what I could tell. No. So it looked to be in pretty good nick for that. So we'll look to some of the listener questions very shortly and give some final thoughts on that game. But the awards, which are the Shannon Noel Award, of course, the Jason Blake Award, and That's So St Kilda, which is obviously less of. Probably That's So St Kilda would be Anthony Caminiti's public execution last week. I know we probably got a slightly good result at the tribunal with the 3 weeks, but I think people wanted him tried in court for attempted murder. It was probably a little bit over the top, but anyway, that's probably one. But difficult to find. I mean, the Jason Blake was actually probably quite easy, but difficult with certainly with the Shannon Noel Award. For the Jason Blake Award, I'm probably leaning towards Liam Stocker, doing a pretty good job for us every week, as are most of them, to be honest. But yeah, there's a lot of people talking on the socials about whether he would keep his spot when everybody comes back. I would think absolutely, in terms of versatility and ball use. And yeah, I think he's a heart and soul player, as is evidenced by the fact that he's always loved the joint. So he gets it for mine. Nick, do you have one?
I wanted to give some credit to Dougal Howard. I think I've given Liam Stocker enough credit the last couple of weeks. I want to give some credit to Dougal Howard. I think that he came over as, I guess a big money signing, big name signing, in that trade from Port a couple of years ago, and probably hasn't always lived up to some of those expectations. I know that there's some obvious regular doubts around some of his ball use and decision making and all that sort of stuff. But in that first half, when Battle and Wilkie were really struggling on Saturday afternoon, evening, I thought that Dougal Howard really stood up and took some of that slack off those two blokes that we expect so much from week after week. And I thought that was his best game in quite a while from Dougal Howard. And I just thought it was worth giving him a bit of a shout out. No, I put him in the votes earlier, but just wanted to, give him a bit of credit in that he's obviously working hard. He's doing the right things. He's in the team, and that Ross won't hesitate to make changes if players aren't playing their roles. But he's doing a job. And last week was the best game I've seen Dougal Howard play in quite a while.
Yeah, for a bloke that can't put a shoe on, he goes all right.
Yeah. Not a bad kick with the song.
It was probably his best kick for a couple of years. Yeah.
Maybe he's just played that way, but yeah. Stocker's a good one too, but just someone we didn't expect to get anything from. He was just going to turn up and be a number, I guess. Cordy, he has provided us a lot more than we ever imagined. I'd known that from people down the Bulldogs that he was a great team guy. He always puts in the effort, always 110%, and we've seen it. We've seen exactly what I was told he would be like. And just he's one of those unfortunate ones who's going to miss out when we have everyone back. But the gap he has filled has been amazing. He has given us so much more than we really expected. So great pickup. But when the service is over, we've really got to let him know that he's still part of the team, I think.
And I think just on that, it's not just the role that he's playing, but also the leadership that he's brought. With Jack Steele missing time, with Tim Emery missing time, it's been really important that we've had someone kind of step up in the forward line to be that leader. And with the little blokes around playing some pretty good footy, obviously Caminiti coming through, no Max King as well. I think that Cordy's leadership, he doesn't get a ton of the ball. He makes it count when he does. He takes the mark. He generally doesn't miss. He's kicked some clutch goals for us in the first kind of 6 weeks of the season. But
correct.
From a leadership perspective, in terms of how we structure up, kind of on ground communication and all that type of stuff, has been super important.
Absolutely, and he's unsung, as you say. That the days in the lineup are probably numbered with Max King and those sorts of things. But you couldn't have asked much more for a guy that's lived in defence to have to do that, playing on some pretty good fullbacks over the way. Competing against people like Darcy Moore last week and the like. So absolutely full credit there. The Shannon Knoll Award, or You've Got a Lift. Probably a harsh call because he improved significantly as the game went along. Every now and then, you get this sometimes with players that are good kicks. They either bite off more than they can chew, or they get almost a bit lazy in the sense that they trust their kicking too much. And Wanganeen Miller, a very good player, every now and then he's a lazy sort of lean back kick, thinking, just lace targets out all the time. I'll just float this one across defence, and turns a couple over every now and then. Obviously, the one to Harry Mackay, who kicked it straight up in the air from the subsequent turnover. But yeah, I'd just say to Nash, you are a very good kick, but just concentrate and make sure you execute those, because he makes a lot of mistakes for someone that kicks the ball pretty well.
Yeah, I think it was actually who I gave it to last week, and I reckon he improved on what from last week to this week, I reckon. So I've been sort of been told I've been bringing players back into form with this, so I don't know, it's a real tough one this week. As we're saying, every player really put in the week gone. It's picking the player, I guess, who maybe didn't do the best they could on the day. But I mean, I can only go back to Gresh and that kick. That was just a case of trying to be too clever. Apart from that, his day was brilliant. Let's just get rid of that. Get rid of that, Gresh. That's you've got yourself back into the team. You've got yourself looking good. I mean, you do that, but then you get that kick on the other wing, on the other side, pretty much out of nothing, that lands between three of our players out in the open, that leads to another goal. Let's just get rid of those little fancy things and make sure of it.
I'm going to be slightly harsh. I'm going to give it to Marcus Windhager for all those reasons that we touched on a little bit earlier, in that he was flying in preseason. I mean, he was the player to watch. He was the guy that was going to come out and have a breakout season. And for various reasons, not necessarily his fault, obviously that hand injury in the practice game really threw his preseason off in the start of the season. But we know what he can do. We've got high expectations of this kid, and I think that he's kind of on the periphery of that group that's borderline being dropped, and in the past it's Bytel and Burns and Patton and those kind of guys, and Windhager. There's a little bit of a fear that Windhager could find himself in a group like that this season if he continues only being able to put up a quarter here and going back to the twos for a week or whatever it is. But we all know what he can do, and we just want to see it for a sustained period, because I think he can be a really important player and has the potential to be a star in future.
Yeah, I think that's a perfectly reasonable call, that he's just not at crossroads, but just got to re-establish his position as it stands, which plenty of others have done over the journey. Some listener questions before we wrap things up. Mentioned right off the top, damn Daniel, you fly, says, at what point did you all think the Saints were over the line against Carlton? I guess it's easy on reflection. I thought when Owens kicked the goal from 60, I thought, well, it's probably hard to see them getting back from that, but you work out the equation, and the way we defend. Probably when it was under 10 minutes, you got sort of 8 or 9 minutes to go, and you're still 4 goals up. You're probably thinking, and they looked pretty tired. They were kicking the ball out in the full and things like that. It didn't look like they had anywhere near the run to trouble us. But I guess you're always nervous. Where did you guys think it was done?
My brother went to give me a high five or shake my hand. We had about 75 seconds to go, and I refused until there was 10 seconds. I think we've been burnt so many times that it's just, I know this is a different team and all those things that but the scars are still there. And so it's kind of hard to, like you said, watching the replay on reflection, it was a fair bit earlier than that the game was over. But it's hard to kind of bring together those feelings and kind of watch the last few minutes in confidence or in peace, knowing that you've got the game under wraps when you've been burnt so many times.
Yeah, no, I was probably about halfway through the last quarter when I saw the first few Carlton fans leaving. They did look cooked at that point. So, but despite the fact we were behind at times, unlike other years, I didn't feel as much of here we go. We're not showing up today, that sort of thing. It never had that feeling. But always felt like we're definitely still in this. We're not going to just fall over here. So it wasn't ever any stage of we're gone, but it was got to a point about halfway through the last quarter going, yep, they're gone, they're done.
Yep. It certainly felt that way. Dave Calland asking if we can foresee Mateus Filippo getting rested at some point. Possibly. It's hard to pinpoint exactly when that would be, whether it be an interstate trip or depends how the legs are feeling.
A Billings return.
Get to the mid-season bye.
A Billings return could be a week, similar.
Potentially,
not similar players, but play a similar role and high half forward, can have a run through the middle, can push deep and hit the scoreboard. That's assuming Billings is fit and ready to go, obviously. But it could be a managed week, like you said, and bring someone like Billings in that week.
And look, he may not need one.
That's right.
He's a pretty infectious kid. He might just keep going,
he
get
wants
to the
to play every
mid-season
game.
bye, and then exactly. And he almost took mark of the century on Sunday in that second quarter, which is pretty exciting.
His little spins are pretty impressive. The way that he gets out of traffic and can kind of break a tackle just by taking a couple of steps and spin and still have the awareness. I mean, that would have been a magnificent goal if he'd kicked that.
Yeah, like the one the week before against Collingwood, which would have been unbelievable.
Thinking back the other way, he could be the one player Ross would be scared of dropping. I mean, I reckon he could get pretty angry if he gets dropped. So I don't think he really wouldn't take it well. I don't think.
It probably feels like it's good to have him around. He's infectious and that type of thing. Jared asking if Caminiti or King and Membry can play in the same team together, and he assumes Cordy drops out. Well, certainly two of them can, like King and Membry or Caminiti and Membry or whatever it may be, but probably all three. I mean, last year we played Marshall, Ryder, King, sometimes Hayes as well with Membry. So you could, as whether it changes the structure or not, I don't know, but you could certainly play at least two of them. Marshall Mateus asked a similar question to that as well.
I was discussing with a couple of our other mates at the game. I was saying I'd love to see King actually played further up the field. I reckon that could be the answer. I reckon his movement around the ground could be dominating. Just up on, like, taking the ball on the wing and getting that run, because he's got the pace, he's got the skills with the ball at his feet and the big mark on the wing. I mean, there's not many players that are going to be able to go with him. And it could be a real weapon we could have. So I'd really like to see him move up the ground a bit. Get him into the game, into a couple of games early maybe, and start him at full forward until he's back and ready to go, and then make the shift, because I reckon that could be a real weapon we could bring out.
He's only played a couple of games, but Caminiti, I feel like, can play with almost anyone. I feel like we saw him in that Essendon practice game kind of roam up the wing, take a couple of massive marks kind of on the lead. He's done it a little bit for us in the first month of the season, but he's pretty agile and flexible. And he was a former midfielder that shot up late. He can move across the ground pretty well. He's a pretty good kick, and obviously he presents really, really nicely and hits the contest, hits the ball really hard. So I feel like he could be an option to move up the ground as well and kind of play that kind of link up high half forward type role as well, with Membry, with King, depending on what the structures are, who the defenders are. But the concept, having seen what Caminiti can do over this early part of the season, the thought of him playing on a third or fourth best defender rather than the best defender each week is pretty appetizing.
Depends on his parole conditions. He might not be allowed to leave 50 once they release him, but we'll see. Richard heaping praise on our coaching staff, and Luke mentioning Ross doing that with every presser, which he does do. Obviously praising Enright, Harvey and Hayes, who have done a tremendous job and continue to be really important. Nomad Cram says, Friday night footy in the eyes of the country didn't work out so well for us last year. Are you confident this team is different and can take its chance on the big stage? Yes, would be my answer. Also, Parker had the hope we'd be 3-3 by now. What's the expectation for the next 6? Have they changed? Yeah, I think the expectations definitely change. As for what they are exactly, I don't know, but it feels like it's a sustainable game plan. They've certainly exceeded my expectations, and I guess that's the point I was trying to make earlier. It just feels different. It feels like we're ready for this, and that we'll handle it, whatever happens, from my view.
The Friday night thing and whether we're confident that this team is different, I think it's kind of 50-50. I mean, yes, you're confident this team is different, but I remember kind of maybe not this week, but I feel like last year we had the conversation where, we'd come back from a couple of deficits late, second half, third quarters, early in the last quarter, and run teams off their feet, and we kind of went, we might actually be able to trust this team now, and it turned out that we couldn't. And so there's a bit of that. We talk about scarring and all that type of stuff. That's still there in the back of my mind, but it certainly does feel different. It's a much more structured, accountable game plan. Everyone knows their role. Like we said at the top H, it doesn't matter if it's Sinclair off halfback or in the middle. It doesn't matter if it's Wanganeen Miller off halfback or Brad Hill on the wing, or everyone knows what they're meant to do. Doesn't matter if Ross moves the magnets at halftime or whatever. Everyone plays their role, whatever that is. They understand what their role is at any given point. So in that regard, I'm a lot more confident this team is different. In terms of the expectation for the next 6, I mean, we talked about would have been happy that we might be 3-3 after 6. Looking at the fixture over the next couple of weeks, I mean, you have to think that the expectation is kind of 8-1, 9-1, over the next month or so, given the fixtures and the schedule, that this next month is essentially incredibly winnable. And that's got to be the goal now, is just to win every game.
Yep, it's not a bad draw from here, and obviously you've got to turn this momentum with players coming back into something meaningful. It feels sustainable. Let's tick off another challenge this week in Port Adelaide, and then regroup. Let's get to 6-1, which we should have done 12 months ago, and prove how much we have matured as a group, and can immediately reap the benefits of not selling a home game. Friday night lights, and a big opportunity. It's great to be back on board. Big thank you to Gordon Fode for joining us earlier on as well, and you can catch all of our episodes online where you'll catch your podcasts. Go Saints, and we'll see you at Marvel.